alter ego. It's what I wanted to focus on, the new album you have. And I think, as you saw, I already posted today. Um, I got to say that "Lost in This Moment" is one of the tightest pop songs I've heard in a long time. And I'm wondering, when crafting something like that, it seems to me that the big challenge would be knowing when to stop adding material. Because it seems like there's no wasted sound, no wasted note, no wasted lyric, or anything like that. How does one develop the technique to know, okay, this is done?
This is done. Very good question. That song in particular, "Lost in This Moment," is probably the longest or the oldest song, especially the riff, the main riff part, which is kind of the introduction riff, which goes over the chorus. That has been around about 6 years. That's a song I kind of had reworked as a different song with a band I was in before I started recording solo stuff.
Oh,
And it was this thing I really, really love the guitar on, the guitar riff on it. And most of the stuff I write is generally, it starts out as an idea on guitar. And that one was very much similar to that. So I had this, it's kind of like I had this guitar run, this guitar piece that I always knew something needed to happen at. And I suppose I've lots of demos and lots of different recordings where there's certain parts of it that I know aren't going to make it, and certain parts I know are. I kind of keep them in storage until I know they're going to be part of a bigger idea. And I suppose "Lost in This Moment," I knew it needed, because the guitar on it is quite frantic. It took me a long time to realize that it really needed something to bring it back in the verses, because the verses really, I suppose, pull back. There's quite a drive to the chorus part, and I
yeah.
suppose it took me a long time to figure out that it really needed that breather in the verses.
Okay. Okay. And so when you get these ideas, I mean, and you said you have demos with all these different ideas.
Mm-hmm.
Do you try and complete them in the moment, or do you just is the goal to get down, okay, this is what I have now, and maybe it'll work for something now, or maybe it'll work down the road?
That's kind of it. I suppose songs all come packaged differently. Some of them are some of them come immediately. There's a song on the album called "Where's the Music Gone," which actually, interestingly, Jason Faulkner plays bass on both those songs, "Lost in This Moment" and "Where's the Music Gone." But "Where's the Music Gone" is a song. It was something I was sitting at home doing this run on the guitar, and I suppose the idea for the lyric came to me very, very quickly. And the song, like, that really was, I would say, maybe in the space of an hour, that song was done. There are other songs that bits and pieces have come from projects or songs that I was working on 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 years ago. And I suppose there's other stuff. There's other songs, I suppose, as I was probably aiming to write a 10-song album.
Mm-hmm.
There are other things that kind of came organically as I was either in the studio, or kind of songs that developed um, and I suppose allowed me to record them in time to put them on this album.
Yeah, and then you mentioned Jason, playing bass on those particular tracks.
Mm-hmm.
You are a multi-instrumentalist, and on previous work you've played a lot of the
Exactly, yeah.
instrumentation on it. This one you had a lot of help, a lot of impressive help from various people.
Mm-hmm.
What determines, okay, I'm going to play this instrument on this track, or I'm going to go to someone else for this track?
Good question. I suppose the Jason, for example, I first kind of became aware of Jason with his bass work with the band Air. That was the first time I seen Jason perform, was when he was playing bass with Air. So it's also, Jason has a certain style of bass playing that I adore, and I suppose when there are certain songs like "Lost in the Moment," I mean, there's definitely, I would say, in certain elements, I'd say myself and Jason are definitely drawing from the same well of some of the power pop stuff, and definitely I'm a big fan of Jason's stuff. So I mean, I suppose I probably could have sent him any of the songs in the album, and he would have brought something amazing to it. It was very much a moment in time. I had those songs ready, and I thought They were two really good fitting songs for him. And similarly, I suppose, I mean, I was very lucky with how a lot of the collaborations came about, because Roger Manning's on one of them, and the one Roger plays on is really, it really suits Roger. And like everything else, I suppose, and as well as I'm putting it down to songwriting, recording, the entire process, a lot of it is down to luck. So it's just, I mean, these songs were ready. I had actually sent, because Gary Lucas, who plays guitar, he was in Captain Beefheart and wrote the first two songs on Jeff Buckley's album. He plays a guitar solo on a song on the album called Love Is All That Matters. But I had actually sent Gary Love Is All That Matters and All Is Fair in Love and War, which I give him the choice. Do you want to play this one or this one? And he chose to go with Love Is All That Matters. And then I handed All Is Fair in Love and War over to Roger Manning.
Okay. Was it not enough? Was he not allowed to choose both?
He probably could have. It was more of a time. It was more of a time restraint.
Got it. Okay.
It was there was studio time involved, so it was pretty much get one done and get one done well.
Yeah. Okay.
And he delivered.
Yeah. And then, speaking of that, I loved that in the liner notes for World Keeps Turning Round, it lists amongst the material that Martin Quinn added, quote, additional guitar magic, which A, I thought was awesome. B, I'm wondering if you can elaborate what makes up additional guitar magic.
Yeah, it's interesting. Martin done some beautiful, I suppose, Martin record, Here Comes the Rapture with Martin, and it was an absolute no-brainer that I went back to him for the second album. I suppose, again, he really gets all my reference points. He's a huge Jellyfish fan. And I was recording World Keeps Turning Round, and there was something, we were sitting for ages kind of going, there's something missing. And we were sitting for ages trying to figure out what it was. And it was something, I suppose, there was nothing obvious jumping out at us, because we were kind of going to, do we put in some strings here? Do we put in, what's missing? What could just take it? And it was something, it just needed something very subtle. And I think I took a break and went and got a coffee and came back, and Martin went, I've got it. And there's some very subtle guitar things happening in it. There's just little things kind of glistened around it, and it's hard to even pull out. But it's kind of mostly in the coda, in the outro section. There's just almost like one note. There's like one note playing almost through it, and it just kind of it is magical. There's something that just kind of this very subtle note really managed just to elevate the outro part and just kind of add exactly what's needed. And to his credit, that's what Martin does. He's always tuned into what a song needs.
Yeah,
he's an incredible guy.
And then, I mean, I'm curious. It's. Do you think the average listener notices that little touch, or do they just notice the full effect, the full feeling that it's?
I think I would hope it's the full feeling. And I suppose you kind of touched on two different things. I think the way people are listening to music is much different than it was. I think things have kind of gone, like years ago when I've recorded music. The car, everyone says that the car, you need to listen to a mix in a car because most people listen to music in a car. Whereas now I think consensus is listen to it on the phone, because most people listen to music on their phone, which is slightly horrendous. It's horrendous. It's slightly worrying that this is the medium that you're creating music for. And I suppose going back to the song you're talking about, World Keeps Turning Around, I suppose where you're on about the feeling, there is very much, I suppose, two very distinct vibes going on in that song, because there's one quite subdued. It kind of starts, the whole point of it is that it is kind of it's kind of quite restrained and quite straight, and then I suppose it blossoms into this very kind of almost Beach Boys-esque. I suppose it's almost let free, and I suppose the part I'm talking about, definitely it is more of a feeling. There is more of a flying
right.
free part to it.
Yeah, okay. And yeah, no, actually makes me think, because a couple of years back I interviewed Bob Clearmountain, who's a mixer and has mixed albums for Bruce Springsteen and Bon Jovi, et cetera, et cetera. And he talked about how he has like bookshelf speakers. And people say, "Oh, you must have this massive elaborate setup." He said, "No, I just have these little bookshelf speakers because that's what the average person has, and I want it to sound good on the system." But he said, "I draw the line at earbuds. I don't bother to mix for that, because that's just awful, you know."
Yeah, I know. Where is it going to end up? It is yeah, it is interesting, because I
Yeah,
imagine, as you said, very few of the people, of the end listeners, um will be hearing it on, I suppose, the way I would love for them to hear it, because everyone I suppose who has been getting the album through Bandcamp, or who I suppose was sending me messages saying that they were downloading it on whatever streaming service, going, please turn it up loud, because it's, I suppose, a lot of work went into, there's a lot happening in every song.
yeah,
They're huge mixes. Like, I mean, there's absolutely, I would say there's hundreds of tracks on every song. There's a lot going on in every song, vocal wise, instrument wise. And I suppose I would love if you know, maybe put it on the cover next time. Please only listen to this album very loud.
all right. Or I mean, you can buy a CD of
Yeah,
the album, so
indeed.
which
Yeah,
I always encourage people to do, because you miss so much otherwise. And
indeed. The Cool Cat Music actually have put it out in the US.
Cool
So
Cat Music, okay,
Cool Cat Music,
all
all
right.
with K's,
I will I
have put
will
out.
I will link to that, because I was
Please.
the only thing I saw was like, oh, all right, I'm gonna have to pay an import fee and all this kind of stuff to get this. And but no, yeah, that's cool. And then, speaking of the amount that goes into it, and staying with the track of World Keeps Turning,
Mhm.
you guys had some really interesting instrument choices on this album that you don't usually see, especially on pop oriented music. For instance, with World Keeps Turning Around, whose idea was it to include a flugelhorn?
Flugelhorn, very interesting. When I'm writing stuff and demoing stuff, a lot of the time they'll be quite complete, because I kind of play a lot of different instruments. I will play piano, play guitar, play bass, double bass, and in some cases on this record I played trumpet in a couple of songs, which was an instrument I have kind of started learning on and off over the last couple of years, but it was something I really felt I wanted to play somewhere on the record.
Mm-hmm.
But flugelhorn was an interesting one, because a lot of the times with most of the songs I write, I have a sound in my head that I know what I want parts of it to sound like. And I suppose when that song was developing in my head, I had that do 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 do, and I got this really really terrible Casio keyboard to record the demo, and I found the sound, and it worked really well on the Casio keyboard. And then when I went into the studio, when the song was ready to record, I went into the studio, and it was this whole thing where poor Martin again, I said to Martin, this sound, how do we make this sound a real thing,
Mm-hmm.
without sounding terrible? And like everything else he does, he just kind of listened for about 30 seconds and went, do we know anyone who plays flugelhorn? So as it happens, I text a friend of mine, Cavan, who done the brass on several songs. He done the brass on Where's the Music Gone? He done all the brass on, or all the trumpet on my first record. And I texted him and I said, by any chance do you play a flugelhorn? And he sent me a picture back of his flugelhorn nearly immediately. So
Wow.
again, had he said no, that could have been French horn. It could have been I don't know, could have been many different things, or it could have ended up just keeping the Casio sound. Who knows?
Right, right. Yeah, along similar lines, the song Red River Run, again, delving into the instruments used for that. One is an omnichord and the other one is a
Yes.
harmonium. What do you get from using those instruments that, say, you couldn't get from a synthesizer?
Good question. Again, Red River Run, I was very uncertain what I wanted Red River Run to sound like. again, it was the demo I recorded of it was pretty much a finger picky. I wanted something. I really wanted it to sound uneasy. I wanted it to sound what's the right word? Queasy, even almost. There is like a dream, and I suppose through that approach, it kind of became like a kitchen sink. Let's just throw everything in and see what works, because there's a lot of people against playing on that one. Sylvie Lewis is doing some absolutely divine singing on it. Ken Stringfellow is playing the omnichord, as you mentioned, and piano on that. And yeah, I mean, it that again, I suppose, coming back to it, was just, I suppose, a lot of the right people who played the right things at the right time, who got the right song, who, I mean, it just, and as it happens, I would say Red River Run is probably my favorite song. If I had to pick one, it probably is my favorite on the album. But again, it is, I think it's just because I managed, there was a feeling, or there was a vibe I really wanted to capture in that song, and it really, I think it just landed exactly where I wanted it to land.
Yeah, and you mentioned that you said somewhere that this was, the most personal material you've ever written, and difficult material you've ever written, in part because it was helping you process the death of your father. And delving into that, did you approach songwriting differently because it was so personal, or was it still the same technique?
It's a good question. I think for anything I've written previously, so I think I've had one record out before this and 2 EPs. Anything I've written previously, I consciously stayed kind of detached from, I suppose, lyrically. It's, I suppose, I've either written songs about other people, or I've written stuff because I was never comfortable writing about myself. And I suppose things that were happening to me, and there was part of me always kind of thought maybe it's a bit, who wants to know what's happening to me? It's like, I just thought maybe that was a little naff or something. And then I suppose with this, I suppose there was a moment in time after my father passed away where I suppose I was very, I think, like so many people going through so many different stages of grief, I was kind of like I was almost in a little bubble, trying to figure out a lot of what was happening and what had happened, and what was going to happen in the future. And I suppose some of these songs, something which I had done slightly before. I used to just, if I was writing lyrics, I'd write them down a sheet, and then I just have lots. When I go into the studio, I'd have like 60 sheets. This was very different in that this was a notebook, and this was, a lot of it was kind of stuff I was writing even outside of trying to write. Like Red River Run, for example, is stuff, a lot of it came from, I suppose, thoughts, poems, and different things that I had written without having written them specifically for that song. But there's kind of, I suppose, that is kind of the constant through. I mean, the opening song, World Keeps Turning Round, is very much about, which I think everyone who has lost anyone realizes, I suppose, that after the funeral and all that, everyone else's world returns to normal and the world keeps turning around. And I suppose you're left with this absolutely shattered life, and you have to just try and rebuild it. And I suppose that narrative kind of goes pretty much through the album, of me, I suppose, trying to understand what had happened and how I would try and continue.
Yeah. No, one of the bands I work with, Cowboy Mouth, has this song called "Where's the Rain" that Fred, the lead singer, wrote about the death of his father, and it's kind of the same thing in the sense of, his father died, and yet it's still sunny, and it's all this happy atmosphere for the rest of the town kind of thing, and it's like, shouldn't it be downpouring? Shouldn't everyone be enmeshed in the same sorrow that I'm in? And how is it that they're just going along as if nothing happened? So yeah, no, that's a really,
I think again the weather metaphor. There's a line in Red River Run. I watch the dark clouds that no one else can see.
yes, yeah, that's fabulous.
Totally.
Yeah,
completely.
And so does this mean, or as a result of what you created here, are you going to intentionally try and be metaphorically, open up your veins and bleed onto the music page in the future?
In future, I don't think this is something that is. I don't think that's not. It's not really a conscious decision to do something. I think I probably am more comfortable to approach a song being a bit more personal about it. I don't think it's a thing. Like I suppose every song I write either has a feeling or a vibe to it, and I suppose the lyric will always have to fit with the music and with the vibe of the song. But I don't know if I'd ever approach it kind of going like, this song's going to be a personal one, or this, and it might be the case that might happen. But I mean, I suppose there's a lot of different things. There's a song on the album called "Love Is All That Matters," and that song came about, I suppose, in the weeks following when my father passed away. I was kind of sitting having a bad day, and my daughter Lily, she's now 10, she would have been about 7 at the time. She loves drawing, and she was like doodling on a little notepad, and she just kind of handed me this picture, and it was a picture of me and her holding hands, and it said "Love Is All That Matters" at the top of it.
Wow.
And she gave me that, and that, that's, and it's the whole thing. I suppose the inspiration comes from a lot of different places, and that definitely was an inspiring moment. And who knows how many more inspiring moments her and my other 2 kids may bring me.
Yeah. And then I guess, another way to look at it is what's very personal to you may not seem that way to the average listener, if only because they're listening to the song and maybe A, interpreting it through their own lens, or B, applying it to their own memories and experiences. So it's very personal to you, but they're not thinking about you. They're thinking about their own past. And so,
and I suppose that's kind of the hope. That I suppose the hope is that people will listen to it, and people will interpret it in their own way. I mean, I'm in no way looking for people to join me on my journey. It's definitely, I suppose, it's important to me that people get what they want from it.
Yeah. And you mentioned your daughter. Your 2 daughters actually did some backup singing on this album for Divide and Conquer.
Absolutely.
And from what I read, one was, at the time of the recording, one was 10, one was 8, something along those lines.
I think they're 10 and 8 now, so that's probably like, that could be like maybe a year, 18 months ago. So yeah.
What direction did you give them?
Shout. There's one part, because they're doing the kind of the stacked vocals during the chorus. There's like a kind of a chanting, shouting part. Divide and conquer, kind of divide and conquer, watch it crumble. Divide and conquer, you're a monster. Yeah, I suppose no more than I was saying about the wanting to include myself playing trumpet on it. It was always kind of, I really wanted them on it, because there were, I suppose, several guest musicians playing on it. My kids were at an age where I thought I would have liked to have them involved somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
And then I picked, it's probably the least it's probably the worst topic of I think Divide and Conquer. There's blood on my shoes, and there's things going on. It's like, because one of my daughters asked if she could bring one of the CDs into school, and I was kind of going like, maybe, right. maybe not. Maybe it's not a good. It's like bad parenting. But no, it was wonderful. I'm really proud of the song. I'm really proud of how the song came out, and I'm really glad to have them in there, because it's it just works. It's kind of a really cool little chant going through the song.
Yeah. And who is easier to direct, children or professional musicians?
Ooh, now there's a question. Well, definitely, I suppose definitely the professional musicians. My kids were great. It was a short recording session. They came in and I think it was probably a break. They probably took a break from watching the iPad. I probably promised them like extra time on the Switch or extra time doing something if they come in really quickly.
Yeah.
And recorded it. But no, I suppose going back to the musicians that are on it, all of the people who are involved in the record, Roger, Jason, Gary Lucas, Sylvie Lewis, Charlotte Hatherley. It was very important to me because I suppose I've been listening to their music for a long time, and I give very little direction to them because it was very important to me to have them have their essence on it.
Mm-hmm.
And I suppose I didn't want to direct that too much. I kind of really wanted them to I kind of wanted them to put their little touch on it. So I mean, it was very much a case with all of them that I sent them the song and they kind of sent stuff back and went.
Which brings up the point that, you know, as I understand it, a lot of this was recorded during lockdown COVID pandemic time. And so there was a lot of remote recording, which, you know, the challenges to that are obvious. But what I'm wondering is, what were the advantages to doing it remotely?
I think for me, the only advantage was the fact that each of these musicians happened to be at home and stuck at home when I need them to be stuck at home. Yeah, I think really and truly that is it, because each of these guys are really, really hard-working musicians. They're like on the road. I imagine most of them are on the road 11 months of the year. So it was, and like I know each of them are on the road probably at this moment in time. They've been back on the road since lockdown stopped. So it really, I mean, COVID and lockdown really presented me with this massive opportunity to work with these guys. And that, I mean, you know, I don't want to say that there were too many positives from COVID, but I suppose the record, when I sit and look at the finished record, I'm really proud of how the record turned out, and I'm really proud that they contributed to it.
Yeah. And talking about the musical ghost looming over your shoulder, so I read that you you perform in a Johnny Cash cover band, tribute band.
I have done, yeah.
And you know, your material sounds very different from his material, but I'm wondering, you know, where is the connection? What are the similarities? What have you learned from immersing yourself in that material that then applied to your own creations?
That's a very good question. Yeah, there are a few people, few musicians I admire as much as Johnny. Johnny, I suppose, you know, Johnny was famous, I suppose, as much for covering other people's songs as writing his own. But the songs that he wrote himself were just meticulously crafted. Stuff like Big River, When the Man Comes Around. I mean, some of his best songs, in my opinion, are some of the ones that he wrote himself. I like the fact it's always this big question over Johnny Cash, the country star, and I suppose Johnny Cash in the 80s, I think through what was happening with the country music scene, kind of got pushed into the cowboy boots and the Stetson world of country music, whereas I suppose country music, when Johnny Cash started playing it in the 50s, was very different. It was more roots music. It was songs of the soil. And I suppose I'm more fascinated by the fact, you know, that Johnny is so much more than a country artist. Johnny Cash is a rock and roll singer. He's a rockabilly singer. He is a folk singer. He is so many things. And I think it slightly frustrates me at times that you know, people look at him as the, you know, the kind of the country guy, and he's so much more than that. And you know, I suppose going back to my own record, you know, having listened to it, that there's a lot going on in it. It's not like it's a power pop record. It's not like it's a folk record. It's not like it's there's a lot of different things happening in it. And I suppose that's always kind of been the music I've been attracted to, is music that there's a lot of feelings, a lot of emotions, a lot of choice, a lot of, you know.
Yeah.
But Johnny's always been. I just I suppose again it's the, as he said himself, the Saturday night and Sunday morning, the sin and redemption. I love that contrast. I love that. I was over in Nashville last April, and was out in Cavan, where Johnny recorded a lot of the American Recordings album. And I've recorded a song out in Johnny's private studio, which will hopefully be released later in the year. But genuinely one of the most amazing, spiritual, incredible experiences of my life was recording in that room, just where such an amazing part of music history happened. Wow.
Yeah. I mean, was it like almost an out-of-body experience, as you're, you know, both singing and going, I'm actually singing in this room right now?
Oh yeah. No, I would say it, I'm trying to think how to compare it. It was one of those things where I think about 3 months after it happened, the penny dropped that it really happened. It was like, it was so dreamlike. It was amazing. It was perfect. It was an absolutely incredible experience to be there, to be using Johnny's guitars, to be, you know, in the space that he recorded. I mean, it was definitely, it was a different experience than anything. It was, spiritual is the best way I can put it. There was something magical and spiritual just about the entire thing. Just the presence in the cabin. There was just something so absolutely brilliant about it.
Cool. Yeah. No, and I get that it can be tough to express something like that. And then talking about guitars, I read that you collect vintage guitars. I'm wondering what is the allure, in the sense of, what do they seem to have that maybe, and this is not a knock against any manufacturer or anything, but what do they seem to have that maybe modern guitars don't?
Wisdom, personality, experience. There is just something about playing a guitar that I suppose has been played to hell. I absolutely love guitars that are just, you know, the whole thing about recreating road-worn guitars is just, that's so terrible. I just love guitars that have naturally aged, and just, again, it is that personality. It is that, you know, the old workhorse, the guitar that just, it's experienced a lot, and you know it's experienced a lot, and just to play them like that, they're absolutely beautiful. I mean, genuinely, I don't believe they make guitars as good now as they did maybe, you know, 50 years ago.
Yeah. But I don't know. It's interesting you put it that way, because maybe it is like people, and that, you know, they develop a history and a personality, and that kind of comes through in whatever sounds they exude.
Completely. No, I completely agree with that. And it's, you know, the whole, was it Neil Young said, there's a song in every guitar.
Yeah.
There is certainly, I do agree with that. But there's some, I think the whole thing is that you get more songs out of other guitars. There's the guitar I've several guitars that I've gotten many songs out of, and they're not going anywhere.
And then just a kind of a flippant question. So the video for Lost in This Moment is a lot of fun. And I'm curious, was your wife involved in casting the lady who played your love interest in the video?
Good question. Absolutely not.
Oh.
No, she was not. I didn't actually meet that girl's, the actress named Siobhan. I met Siobhan about 20 minutes before we started shooting. and I've not spoken to Siobhan since. Pretty much we spent about 2 or 3 hours shooting the video, and she messaged me good luck and different things when the song came out and the video came out. And like, I mean, it worked. It was I think the video works really well. It's I think it's as you said, it's quite playful. It just, there's a certain I suppose listening to a song, it's hard to know visually, I suppose, how to represent it. And Aidan Farley, who made the video for that, and there's a new video coming out next week for Love Is All That Matters, which Aidan also made, and he really connected with the song, and I suppose what the song needed, and I think produced something really, really nice, really fitting.
Yeah, and I mean, I videos are tricky, and like the best ones don't necessarily reinterpret the song, and are certainly not too literal, but just kind of grab that essence to it, and I think that's what's cool about the Lost in the Moment video is it's not literal, but it has the vibe of the song, the sense of fun.
The touch, definitely the touch of fun. Definitely there is a touch of fun. There is a touch of, I suppose, the romantic side, the romantic elements of the song. It really just captures everything in without, I suppose, and it's always kind of important to me not to take the whole thing too seriously. And I suppose that's, I think that I think there's no point in taking any of it too seriously. So and I think the video done a good job in capturing that.
Yeah. No, the only case where I saw it, like they went overboard and kind of reinterpreted, but it's actually fantastic in my opinion, was Tom Petty's "Don't Come Around Here No More" with the Alice in Wonderland vibe. And I read in an interview, he's like, years later, he's like, yeah, even I think that's what the song is about now. So
wow, isn't that amazing? Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Just how the whole narrative of something can change through time.
Yeah, exactly. All right, well, that covers all of my questions. Is there anything we didn't cover that you want to talk about?
I don't think so. No, as I said, the record's out. Very, very pleased with it. Really good to have it out on Cool Cat Music. So if anyone wants to get it on CD, they can get it on coolcatmusic.com. And no, apart from that, I'm working on some live dates. There's an album launch coming up in Ireland on the 29th of April, and we're hoping to do some dates in the US, hopefully later in the year.